Contrary to popular belief, you don't actually need an airbrush if you plan on painting Gunpla. If you're going to be doing a new paint job from the tips of the toes to the top of the head, yeah, an airbrush would certainly be useful. But if you're just planning on painting something, you don't need to spend money on a compressor, special paints and airbrushes. It's just something you don't need to do. What we're going to do today to prove this point is we're going to do a bit of repainting here. We're going to change the shoulders to a nice crystal blue by way of a brush on primer. Now, brush on primer is incredibly cheap but very worthwhile. Everybody should have it in your tool set. So let's look at what we need to do to actually get the paint on this thing quick, efficiently and neatly. One of the first things that we're going to do is actually rough up the area that we're going to add the paint onto. The reason for this is it gives a better surface for the paint to cling to, and you can do this by simply taking whatever it is you use to typically sand your kits and just working it over the area left and right, up and down, all over. So take the shield off, take the arm off, and we're ready to go. Once you've shaken your paint to make sure that it's all properly mixed, get it into a palette or whatever it is that you happen to use, and you're ready to go. It is that simple. The next thing we're going to do is load up our paintbrush with the primer and start to paint it onto the piece. Now, you'll want to put this on in 2 thin coats rather than just globbing it on all at once. That way you can avoid streaks. It's not entirely opaque, so two coats might serve you better anyway. But brush it on, get it into all the nooks and crannies, all the corners, wait for it to dry and repeat. Make sure you don't forget the edges because they'll still be visible too even after the arm has been connected. The importance of a second coat really can't be overstated enough because, like I said, this is not typically a completely opaque paint and you don't want the white of the armour to show through and change the final colour. Once you've given that time to cure, you can shake up your secondary colour and get it into your palette ready for use. Now, just like before, you're going to want to paint on your secondary colour if it isn't terribly opaque in 2 separate coats. This is a bit of a holdover from miniature painting where you're trying to get the paint on as thin as possible, and because we don't want it to look thick and blotchy on the final model, we apply it twice. 2 thin coats equals 1 nice opaque coat. Unless of course the paint you're using is very thin in pigment, in which case more than 1 paint coat might be necessary, though hopefully that isn't the case. But as before, pay attention, avoid strokes, move that paint around until you're happy with the smooth coat, apply it to the edges and keep on working. If you happen to get some paint on an area that you didn't want painted, don't worry, these are only acrylic paints we're using at the minute, and you can simply scrape off the excess with a toothpick or a hobby knife, whatever you want. It'll come off easily. If you like, you can leave it there, but I suggest using a top coat, and in this case we're going to be using Army Painter's Brush On Anti-Shine Matte Varnish. It's great stuff. Just like before, get it into your palette and it's ready to use. Again, you don't need an airbrush for things like this. Paint it on to the coloured area. Avoid streaks, move it around until you're content with the coverage, and that's it. So now we'll paint up the other pauldron and that'll be it done. So the point of this video isn't to invalidate airbrushes. I have one and I use it frequently myself, and for bigger projects an airbrush is all but essential. But the fact remains that you do not need one for smaller jobs, and there are very easy, very cheap options that will give you a multitude of results, be it a matte, satin or gloss finish. The more time you spend with your tools, the better the end result you're going to get, and this is just a bit of a quick rush job on an old action figure that I dug out of storage. So save yourself some money, do some research and try new techniques. All you can only ever do is expand your skill set, and the more skills, the more techniques you know, the better your hobbying will be. Hope you enjoyed this video. Take care.